He's Thundarr. I'm E-Lightning, and this is Sports Storm. Today we'll be doing an NBA mock draft. We haven't done one of these in a really long time, so we figured we'd gift you guys with all 30 picks, because we're generous like that. So, who do you have number one, the Boston Celtics taking?
Number one, I have Boston. Still going with Markelle Fultz. I believe he's the best player in this draft. It could be Lonzo Ball, depends on your viewpoint. I think Markelle Fultz would just fit on the Celtics better. Could play an off-ball guard next to Isaiah Thomas. Or if you kind of still draft him to play point, you can just usher him in at once Isaiah Thomas leaves his prime, so you can really have a full dynasty. I think Boston, if you're here, you just have to take the best player available. That's Markelle Fultz.
I also have Boston taking Markelle Fultz. As you mentioned, best player available. You can slot him in at many positions in the lineup, and I just think there's too much talent here for Boston to pass up. Who do you have at number two, the Phoenix Suns selecting?
I'm going to have Phoenix go with Lonzo Ball here. I know they already have Eric Bledsoe, but I feel like they need to usher in a new era. I think if you're the Suns, you should know by now Eric Bledsoe is not your franchise point guard of the future. I think if you get Lonzo Ball here or Markelle Fultz, whichever one falls, you have to take them. I feel like Eric Bledsoe, he's going to be moved at some point pretty soon, I'd imagine, but I feel like Lonzo Ball is the pick here.
I have Josh Jackson. Now, Josh Jackson has really picked his play up recently for Kansas. I think even though he does not have the most reliable three-point jump shot, he has improved in that category over these past couple weeks. And I think if you're Phoenix, I think the log jam at point guard needs to stop. Well, there are many talented guards still on the board. I think Josh Jackson really helps them fit into their lineup without having to make any serious additions to help him fit in. Who do you have at number three, the LA Lakers taking?
How did the Lakers go with Josh Jackson? I know they took Brandon Ingram last draft, but you could slot Josh Jackson in at that two-guard spot. It's not like Jordan Clarkson is going to be a future all-star. He might, but I feel like Josh Jackson definitely makes sense for them here. They already have D'Angelo Russell at point, and there's no big man worth taking. I feel like Josh Jackson at number three is the pick here for LA.
At LA, I have Lonzo Ball here. Now, Lonzo Ball is highly talented. I think you can move it around. Jordan Clarkson, I think, will be traded. D'Angelo Russell and Lonzo Ball could be an elite backcourt for years to come. And I think Lonzo Ball is just too much talent to pass up here. Who do you have at number four, the Orlando Magic selecting?
I'm going to have the Magic go with Dennis Smith here, as Elfrid Payton obviously does not. I mean, he's been playing a little bit better, but he's definitely not going to lead your team to an NBA championship. I feel like Dennis Smith has one of the highest potentials in this draft. Reminds me a bit of an Eric Bledsoe or a Damian Lillard with his explosiveness. Not the best shooter, but I feel like he definitely could improve on that. If he falls to Orlando at 4, I think they definitely should take him.
At number 4 for Orlando, I also have them taking Dennis Smith. As you mentioned, Elfrid Payton's not getting it done. I think Dennis Smith is the most talented player on the board at right now, and I think Orlando just needs to take him. Who do you have at number 5? The
Timberwolves.
Minnesota Timberwolves selecting, my bad.
I'm going to have Minnesota go with Jonathan Isaac out of Florida State. He's been really improving as the year has gone on. He fit in perfectly with this Minnesota team. Probably play a small ball 4 between Wiggins and Karl-Anthony Towns for a really elite young front court for years to come.
I also have them taking Jonathan Isaac. As you mentioned, he could slot in right at the 4, be pretty good there. I also think that he has a lot of talent for the Timberwolves here. He's one of the more higher potential players in this draft class. I think if you're the Timberwolves, I think you need to take him here. Who do you have at number 6, the Philadelphia 76ers taking?
I'm going to have the Sixers go with three-point specialist Malik Monk out of Kentucky. He is an undersized shooting guard, but when he's putting up scoring numbers in this kind of volume, I don't see why you take him. I don't see why you don't take him. I feel like Malik Monk, I think his floor right now is about a J.R. Smith, but I feel like he can improve upon that just as a more consistent J.R. Smith.
At number 6, I have the 76ers selecting Jayson Tatum. I think he can slot in at either a tall ball 2, maybe even a 3 when they don't have Ben Simmons in the game. I think he adds a whole other dimension to the offense. He adds some solid mid-range and three-point shooting, and I think he'd be an overall good scorer that would fit in well with the 76ers team. All right, moving on. Who do you have at number 7, the New Orleans Pelicans selecting?
I'm going to have the Pelicans go with Frank Ntilikina out of Belgium. Not a very well-known player, but thanks to that one tournament that he won MVP in, he's been doing very well. I think he's better than De'Aaron Fox as of right now. I feel like New Orleans needs a true point guard right now. Drew Holiday's okay, but I think you need to get more young talent in. I think Frank Ntilikina is the pick.
At number 7, I have New Orleans selecting Malik Monk. I think while he is a similar player to Buddy Hield, I think that his ability to play both point guard and shooting guard would be a very good thing. I think he also adds a whole dimension of scoring to the New Orleans offense that struggles to shoot from 3 a lot of the time. All right, moving on. Who do you have at number 8, the New York Knicks selecting?
I'm going to have the Knicks go with Jayson Tatum here. It's pretty obvious by now that Phil Jackson wants to get rid of Carmelo Anthony and usher in a new era. I feel like De'Aaron Fox might be a little bit of a reach here at number 8, so I'm going to and Jayson Tatum still on the board. So I think you get a younger wing scorer, kind of develop him. Melo era is pretty much over. I think Tatum's the pick.
At number 8, I have New York selecting Frank Ntilikina. As you mentioned, he won the MVP of that tournament. He's been doing really well overseas. And I think the New York Knicks really need a solid point guard. Derrick Rose is most likely going to walk this free agency. Brennan Jennings is still just a solid backup. And I think Frank Ntilikina has a lot of potential to help, as you would say, usher in a new era 3 times this video. And who do you have at number 9, the Sacramento Kings selecting?
I'm going to have the Kings go with Miles Bridges, maybe bridge the gap between mediocrity and the playoffs. But, I mean, he's a high-flying, high-potential wing. He's improved on his three-point jumper, moving him into the top 10 of my mock draft. Although his team hasn't been doing very well, he has been doing very well as a true freshman for Michigan State. I feel like he'd be a good risk-reward player for Sacramento. It's pretty obvious by now Rudy Gay is not going to remain with the team next year.
I have Sacramento taking De'Aaron Fox. I think the Sacramento Kings really need a good playmaker. Darren Collison is long out of his prime, and I think they just really need a good point guard. I think that would be the first step. Because it doesn't seem like there's all these rumors that they're going to trade Boogie Cousins, but the Kings front office has shown that they really like to keep him in a bad situation. And I think De'Aaron Fox would be a good piece to build around him if that is their plan. All right, moving on. Who do you have at Dallas selecting at number 10?
Number 10, I have Dallas going with De'Aaron Fox. Dallas has made improvements. They do have Yogi Ferrell if he turns out. I'm not sure if they're going to take De'Aaron Fox here, but if Fox does fall to number 10, I feel like they should take him. Not the best scorer, but very good defender, very good athleticism, very good passer. Has drawn some comparisons to John Wall. Not sure if he's that good, but if he does improve on his jumper, he could be one of the best point guards, if not the best point guard of this draft class.
At number 10, I have the Dallas selecting Lauri Markannen. He's very similar to Dirk. He's a very good stretch four out of Arizona, and I think they could really usher in a new era with him. And I just think it'd be pretty cool for them to have one of the best stretch fours of all time mentor one of the stretch fours. And I think that prospect could be enticing to Mark Cuban. All right, who do you have at number 11, the Portland Trailblazers selecting?
I'm going to have Portland go with Justin Patton here out of Creighton. He's really soared up draft boards as the season has gone on. The best big man in this draft class, traditional big man anyway, has been putting up amazing rebounding and defensive numbers for Creighton so far. I feel like Portland desperately in need of a big man, like a real big man does not. Festus Ezeli, who's not really a long-term part of the team. Justin Patton would fit in greatly.
Excuse me. I have Portland taking T.J. Leaf, the power forward out of UCLA. He's having a great season, really complimenting Lonzo Ball. And I think Noah Vonleh is not a long-term option. He's more his potential prime scale has really shortened immensely. And I think T.J. Leaf will be a good high potential pick here for Portland that really needs to just take a risk almost. Who do you have at number 12? The Bucks taking.
I'm gonna have the Bucks go with stretch four in Lauri Markannen. He definitely could add some needed rebounding and outside shooting that this team does not have currently. If Justin Patton was here, I would have had them take him, considering they don't have a ton of post defense right now. Lauri Markannen could work on that, but I feel like if he's still on the board at number 12, they need to take him.
At number 12, I have the Bucks selecting Ivan Rabb. I have them getting their rebounding. I think he could be a good big man inside, so gets to add some post defense, some rebounding. And being one of the older players in this draft class, I think he could really bring some good things to the Bucks. Who do you have at number 13, the really hot Heat taking?
I'm going to have the Dion Waiters-led Miami Heat take Isaiah Hartenstein out of Germany, another overseas prospect. Has really showcased that he should be a mid-first rounder, even a late lottery pick here. Good mid-range game, good rebounding, definitely could develop into a viable starter for the Miami Heat.
I have the Heat here taking power forward Robert Williams out of Texas A&M. He's having a pretty good season for Texas A&M here. And with Chris Bosh looking less and less likely to play every day, I think they need to get another good, solid big man to pair up with Hassan Whiteside. And I think Robert Williams could be that big man. All right, who do you have at number 14, the Charlotte Hornets selecting?
I'm going to have Charlotte go with Ivan Rabb here out of California. not really the highest potential of the draft class, but he's more of a sure bet to produce right away. Has a decent mid-range game. Not the best at shooting threes, could work on that. Good rebounding, solid defender. I think he'd be a good pickup here for Charlotte.
I have Charlotte here taking Harry Giles. I think with Kemba Walker just starting to enter his prime right now, and Nicholas Batum in his at the tail and more at the end of his prime, I think the Charlotte Hornets really need to make a really risky move that could potentially help boost them into the kind of Eastern Conference contender scene. And I think if Harry Giles pans out, he could easily make them that. Which he has. I think if he bulks up, I think he has a lot of potential. Now he does have the injury issues, but if you're a team like the Hornets that has a lot to lose right now, I think the risk is worth it. What do you have at number 15? The Denver Nuggets selecting.
I'm going to have Denver go with Robert Williams, the mid-range shooting, amazing post defender. I feel like he would fit in as at the 4 spot next to Nikola Jokic. Kenneth Faried, Wilson Chandler, and Danilo Gallinari aren't long-term plans for this team. They might go try to trade for a superstar, but it's looking very unlikely. I feel like Robert Williams would fit in, kind of give them a better post defense, I guess.
I have the Denver Nuggets selecting Bam Adebayo. I think he could pair up at the. I think Nikola Jokic plays. You can play Nikola Jokic at the 4 or the 5. He really excels at both positions. I would have Bam Adebayo going in at the 5. As you mentioned, Kenneth Faried and Jusuf Nurkic are definitely not their long-term options right now. And I think that getting Bam Adebayo, a good rebounder and scorer, to pair along with Nikola Jokic could work out good for this offense. All right, moving on. Who do you have at number 16? Our hometown Detroit Pistons selecting.
I'm going to have to take TJ Leaf out of UCLA, one of the best stretch fours in this draft, if not the best stretch four. Like you said, doing very good as a freshman at UCLA next to Lonzo Ball. Who knows, maybe Reggie Jackson could get him some open corner threes to contribute right away as a rookie. I feel like he'd fit very well into Stan Van Gundy's system.
I have Detroit selecting Miles Bridges. He's fallen a lot in my draft, but I think he'd be a great pickup here. Whether he can, I think he can play a plethora of positions, anywhere from the 4 to anywhere from a small ball 4 to a shooting guard. And I think that Miles Bridges could work out well in this offense. And I think if he's still here, there's so much talent. I don't think the Pistons could possibly pass up on him. All right, who do you have at number 17? The Chicago Bulls selecting.
I'm gonna have Chicago go with Harry Giles out of Duke. He's really fallen since the beginning of this year. Kind of relatable to how Skal Labissiere started out very high and really fell farther and farther down as we got closer to the draft. But, I mean, Harry Giles just hasn't been playing well or playing really at all for this Duke team, and I don't see how you can take him so high when he really hasn't showed any production over the past few months. But I feel like if he does fall to 17, Chicago should take him with his high potential that he showed in high school.
At number 17, I have Chicago taking Isaiah Hartenstein out of Germany. I think he's been an overall good player. Playing overseas, he is playing against professional players, and so you got to scale his production to that. And I think he's actually produced really well. I think he could be a good kind of. I think he's like this class's Dragan Bender, and I think if you can get that at 17, I think the Chicago Bulls should be happy with that. All right, moving on. Who do you have at number 18? The Indiana Pacers selecting.
I'm going to have Pacers go with Rodions, Kurucs. I don't know if I said that right. Don't hate on me if I did. You probably will anyway. But
you should hate on him.
Good 3-and-D wing. Plays for FC Barcelona right now. Obviously, because he's such a young player, he's not going to get a ton of minutes. Still averaging around 9 points per game. I feel like he'd be a good 3-and-D guy for the Indiana to get here at number 18.
Indiana, I have them switching Dwayne Bacon here. I think he's a good, with Monte Ellis not being very good as of recently. What?
No, just keep going.
Dwayne Bacon, here. I think he could be a good wing for them with Monte Ellis way out of his prime. I expect them to move him for cap. And I think Dwayne Bacon could be I think he could take up that role very well as like a slasher. All right, moving on. Who do you have at number 19? The Oklahoma City Thunder selecting.
I'm going to have OKC go with the Australian currently. Terrance Ferguson opted not to play college, go play overseas in Australia. Kind of fell down on the draft board since then, but if OKC can get this high-flying, really high-potential guy in Terrance Ferguson, not a lot of unknowns considering he hasn't got a ton of spotlight since he's playing in Australia, but I feel like he could be a good 1-2 punch for Russell Westbrook if they can't land anyone in free agency.
I have OKC selecting Justin Patton. I think he could be a really good piece next to them. I think Steven Adams is, of course, going to be a part of their future. but I think out of Creighton, he's been soaring up draft boards. I have him falling a lot in mine. However, I think if he's here, Oklahoma City needs to take him. All right, moving on. Who do you have at number 20, the Atlanta Hawks selecting?
I have the Atlanta Hawks select Bam Adebayo. Fell quite a bit in my draft class. He's been not producing as much as he did earlier in the year, but he definitely could be a great value pick for the Hawks here. I mean, Dwight Howard's there, but he's obviously not going to be a long-term option, as there have been very many rumors of a fire sale being held at this upcoming trade deadline. So we'll see how that goes. But I just think if Bam Adebayo is still here, you need to take him.
I have him starting John Collins out of Wake Forest here. He's been having a pretty underrated season right now. He's been storing up a lot of draft boards. I have him being here at number 20. And as you mentioned, Dwight Howard's probably not going to be that much of a long-term option considering he's old and out of his prime. And as you mentioned, there's a fire sale going, which will leave a lot of spots open. I think John Collins would really have some room to blossom in Atlanta. All right, moving on. Who do you have at number 21, Denver taking?
I'm going to have Denver take Donovan Mitchell out of Louisville, having a fairly productive season, averaging about 15 points for the Cardinals. I feel like Denver, they did take Malik Beasley and Jamal Murray last year. I mean, they kind of have an overload at the wing spot, but really, at this point, you need to find one that works as a long-term option. Jamal Murray might be that one, but Donovan Mitchell, I think, would be a great piece to add right now.
All right, at number 21, I have Denver selecting Jonathan Motley. I think he could pair up nicely. As you mentioned, I think the front court is going to have a fire sale in Denver, and I think they need to replace it with more young, solid guys, not like Kenneth Faried, who's a known quantity now, not like Jusuf Nurkic, who's busted. I think they need to get more young, high-potential guys, and I think Jonathan Motley is a high-potential guy. He's having a good season for Baylor, and I think he'd work in well with Denver. All right, who do you have at number 22, the Toronto Raptors selecting?
I'm going to have the Raptors select John Collins here out of Wake Forest. Like you said, a very underrated season so far. Been scoring in large numbers for the Demon Deacons. I feel like Toronto could use another big man, kind of weak at the power forward spot. John Collins could slot right in.
At number 22, I have Toronto taking Justin Jackson. I think they one of their only weaknesses still is small forward, and I think that he has a lot of potential to develop in the lineup, and then I think he could really come in like maybe 2-3 years and be a solid contributor. And I think this late in the round, I think that's really all you can ask of what they did pick here. Who do you have at number 23, the really hot Washington Wizards taking?
I'm going to have the Washington Wizards go with Jarrett Allen out of Texas. Kind of fell below into the second round towards the beginning of the year, kind of gaining steam. Very good rebounding center, pretty good post defender. Not a ton of potential, but I feel like he could be a very good, solid backup center for Washington, or even starting if something happens to Marcin Gortat.
I have Washington here selecting OG Anunoby to be a good defensive wing. They play in the Eastern Conference, so they're always going to have to go up against LeBron for the foreseeable future. OG Anunoby, I think, is a really good, solid defensive wing. And I think when you play, in a league with so many great small, offensive small forwards, I think you really need to have a good defensive wing. Now, Otto Porter's been having a good season, but he's not a lockdown defender. I think OG Anunoby could add that. Who do you have at number 24, the Toronto Raptors selecting?
I'm going to have Toronto with the Clippers pick select Tyler Lydon out of Syracuse. Was supposed to be projected near a lottery pick at the beginning of the season. Kind of fell off the radar. Still definitely a first-round pick. Good stretch for Toronto. I think you need to take two big men here. Hopefully one of them pans out. I know they took Pascal Siakam and Jakob Poeltl last year, but I feel like you just got to keep adding talent until one of them just works out.
I also have Toronto taking Tyler Lydon. As you mentioned, was projected to be much higher, having kind of a shaky season so far for Syracuse, but I think that Toronto needs to take him here. I think they, as you mentioned, they got to keep taking big man until one of them just is electrifying. Their stars are in their prime. Toronto needs to win now, and I think you got to keep taking these risks until somebody gives you just that one last production to get to the finals past the Cavs. Who do you have at number 25, the Utah Jazz selecting?
I have the Jazz going with Jaren Blossom game here. I feel like you need to have some type of insurance in the case that Gordon Hayward leaves in free agency. I doubt he will, but I feel like it would be good to have more depth at the wing position. Blossom game kind of having just a pretty much average season for Clemson. People expected him to break out, be like the next Buddy Hield, so-called, like the senior to break out. But because he is a senior, he won't go very high in this draft. Jaren Blossom game, though, could add insurance at the small forward position.
Number 25, I have Utah selecting Jarrett Allen. As you mentioned, was in the second round a lot, and then he's been surging up recently, and I think the Utah Jazz should take him here. Rudy Gobert is having a great season so far. I have him as kind of an all-star snub almost, and I think that Utah Jazz should really get a good backup center to put behind him, and I think that could be Jarrett Allen. Who do you have at number 26, the Brooklyn Nets selecting?
I'm going to have Brooklyn select P.J. Dozier out of South Carolina, having a very productive season for the Gamecocks, one of the best teams in the SEC outside of Kentucky right now. But I feel like P.J. Dozier, that dual guard capability, can shoot the three. I feel like if you're the Nets here, you need to take whoever you can to improve your team in the long run. I know they took Karis LeVert last year, but you really have no clue what his potential is as of now. P.J. Dozier, I feel like would really fit into this Nets team.
I have them taking Terrance Ferguson here. Now, I know they have Sean Kilpatrick and Karis LeVert, but, honestly, the Nets, there's honestly nothing long-term here for the Nets. I don't think there's any pieces that are really in the future, definitely. And I think that Terrance Ferguson could just be another high-potential player that they could take just to say, hey, we're in a rebuilding time. Why not just take this player with who has some potential? Who do you have at number 27, the Portland Trailblazers selecting?
I'm going to have Portland take Justin Jackson out of North Carolina. Another veteran for falling later in the first round. Portland has kind of depth issues at small forward. I know they have Evan Turner, and Alfred Camino is kind of a dual forward, and Alan Crabb kind of plays a shooting guard too. I feel like Justin Jackson would give them some extra youth if they want to move any of those pieces.
I have Portland selecting Tony Bradley. Not much to say here for this one. I just think he's a pretty high potential player. And this way in the draft, I think you really got to look at potential. And I think he could be good for Portland if they develop him correctly. Moving on, who do you have at 28, the Houston Rockets selecting?
I'm going to have Houston go with Purdue big man Caleb Swanigan, having a very productive season for the Boilermakers. I know I've said most of these players having productive seasons, but, he's been very good for them. I know Purdue's not the best team. They're still second in the Big Ten. Not that high of a potential right now for Houston, but they could add some extra rebounding and post defense.
And number 28, I have Houston selecting Alonzo Trier. Ever since he's come back from the injury, he's been an absolute monster for Arizona. I think while the injury may scare some people off, I think if he's a still available late here, I think Houston should take him. Trevor Ariza is not going to get it done at the small forward position long term. And also, they still have an opening at shooting guard now that James Harden has been playing most of his minutes at point. And I think he could fit in really well with this Rockets team as a scorer. Who do you have at number 29, the San Antonio Spurs selecting?
I'm going to have the Spurs go with dual guard out of Duke. Luke Kennard leads them in points right now. Been putting up pretty much a phenomenal season for the Blue Devils. Really has gone pretty underrated in terms of mock drafts. I feel like San Antonio could get a very good pickup here to kind of come off the bench for them. Even possibly play shooting guard if Danny Green stops producing. I feel like Luke Kennard should be the pick if he falls this low.
I have San Antonio taking Caleb Swanigan here. I think that San Antonio could use Caleb Swanigan. He's got a lot of potential. He's got a great frame. I think he could play a good power forward role for them with LaMarcus Aldridge aging. I think you could really slot him in anywhere as a good backup. And the Spurs have proven they can develop players into really good players. Like Kawhi Leonard was kind of similar. He was a high potential player with a good frame, but didn't really have much production going in, and then they turned him into an MVP candidate. So you never know what they could do with Caleb Swanigan here. Who do you have at number 30, the Utah Jazz taking?
I'm going to have Utah go with a point guard here from Oklahoma State, Jawan Evans. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it. Playing very well for Oklahoma State so far. Utah could use some point guard depth. George Hill is there. Shelvin Max is their backup, but I feel like they don't really have a long-term option at point guard. George Hill is still on the wrong side of 30. Maybe Evans could turn out for them.
I have the Utah starting Jerron Blossom game. I think you had mentioned them taking him before, talking about an insurance policy for Gordon Hayward. And I think that is a good plan. I think that Jerron Blossom game, while he is a senior, I think he adds a good, decent bench piece for them. And I think they really just need to keep adding more talent if they really want to be a contender in the West. That is it for us today at Sports Storm. Like,
comment,
subscribe.
peace.